greatest show on earth.
Welcome to another, I guess it's another conversation. We're going to call these ones Chronicles.
A convo.
This is a convo. They're the Convo Chronicles because we're featuring some very timely observational points that we're going to make about what happened this week and, last week. But either way, we're talking about the myths of, I hope it's a myth. I don't know. Myths of election year shows. Clearly, we just had a presidential election. But actually, before we jump into that, the Con Culture Convo is supported by Toy Temple. Toy Temple is one of the largest Funko and exclusive pop culture distributors in the United States. They specialize in providing an experience for fans through events, experiences, and an easy-to-navigate website full of unique collectibles at incredible prices. They have 9 retail stores in Arizona, booths at San Diego and New York Comic-Con, and a fast-growing website with 24/7 customer service. So head on over to thetoytemple.com, and we have a special for our Convo listeners. Use promo code CONTALK15 to take 15% off your next order. That's thetoytemple.com. And thanks to Toy Temple for supporting the Convo. Tim, did you check out our channel on the old YouTubies? But people are probably watching.
Yes, we hit that the half
half thousand, the half to monetization.
The half thousand.
Like 500 subscribers. Just imagine applause and things falling behind me from the ceiling. We really want to say thank you to you guys for subscribing to us and watching our combos. It means a lot to us. You're
literally everything I have in my life right now. So
wow. And next on really depressing topics, let's throw it to Tim Hyde. This podcast is all he lives for. So I'm sorry.
You don't have to date in today's day and age. I think anybody else is single knows that it's the worst thing ever. So holidays are coming up. I'm not trying to be by myself. You know what I mean?
Trying to swipe right for Santa baby. That's next on our new podcast, Hog Talk.
This is why I got my little
put it out there.
Why are we starting a new pod every week?
For one of you lucky 500 subscribers. Open chest Tim.
Tim is available.
Tim's trying to get himself a Christmas date. Maybe Thanksgiving if things move quicker. You know what I'm saying. Anywho, back to a really depressing topic.
Unwrap a medium-sized present. Boom.
He's talking about his entire body.
I mean, not body.
Not specifically something else. Because medium's a reach. Either way,
depends what country you're in, okay?
Yeah, really, that's true. Are we on the metric system? You don't want to be on the metric system, my friend.
It's a higher number, so it feels bigger.
Oh, no, it's not. Oh, millimeters. Okay. Sorry, we got sidetracked.
It's like 800 millimeters.
Jeez, so Pete.
Which is like still chest, 2 inches. Yeah.
His chest size, his suit coat size.
Yes.
So obviously,
this cute snazzy shirt I'm wearing for all you lucky ladies out there.
That's true. All 500. No. Anyway, thank you for watching. I know 30, most of you just unsubscribed, but we'll get back to 500 soon.
Right.
So
thank you guys for being our 400 subscribers.
But we've been hearing this from a lot of vendors. We've been talking about it exhaustively for months.
For a year and a half. It's been fucking a year and a half. Everyone's talking about this.
How is this election going to affect cons? We should be more concerned about America, but we're not. We're concerned about making money because we're all unabashed vendors who are doing this for one reason only. It's the love of conventions.
And money.
It's money. It's money. Honestly, that's the first one was a lie. Either way, we all knew or felt, a lot of people have felt that this coming up election definitely has already been affecting some people's wallets. When people get worried about things or whatever, they get a little more stingy with disposable income, which is honestly 100% of our income. Is somebody else's disposable income. We don't sell There's not a lot of things at cons that you can't live without. I know that's probably not something that vendors want me to say. But there are things that we impulsively want to buy when we see at cons, and having a little bit of money in your pocket is the way to do that.
I can't survive without Scentsy candles. So
thank God there's almost always a Scentsy booth at any convention. Also, I can't survive without getting gutters on my home. Thank God there's a gutter guy at most mid-range shows.
Oh.
Anywho, or new windows. I was next to a new windows guy not too long ago, and it's like, why? They talk to no one.
Or the 37 turkey booth at the.
I mean, that at least has some payoff. Honestly, any food booths. I was at a con not too long ago that was selling dill pickle flavored, like different flavors of dill pickles. The worst smelling booth I've ever seen at a convention. Packed. People in line getting jars of pickles and eating them right at my booth, which was not great. But I digress.
Oof, that puts you in quite a pickle.
Stop it. I was not setting up that dad joke at all.
Yes.
So we just kind of want to discuss it. Like, if you guys, especially if you're vendors, feel free to chime in the comments below. I know every single vendor I've talked to in the last 6 months or most of 2024 has thought about this,
brought it up,
and I will just say my year of 2024 has been up better than my 2023 year. Obviously, it doesn't touch 22 or 21 or 19 for that matter. However, mine have trended up, but then we got into the weekend right before the election, which was a week ago. I was at Rhode Island Comic Con along with you, and I would argue they had probably a record.
It was the biggest crowd. It was their biggest crowd,
massive crowd, and huge. I ended up being significantly down in sales. Same booth.
What percentage would you say?
I was about 40% down. From last
I was about
year.
30 to 32, something like that. I think
I will say, and last year was a terrible year for me. So, and I try to only assess shows from the previous year. You can get into that slippery slope of, is it best of all time, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes it is, but most likely it's just easier to compare to last year. And I was significantly down with more people, arguably, than last year. So it, of course, made me feel like, okay, everybody's clinching up. This is in 3 days. This was going to be, the big election, and everybody's clinching up. And I talked to a few people that were having the same experience I was, but I talked to several people that were doing great. They did great at Rhode Island. So it's kind of the same as any other cons.
Were those people that were doing really great at the show, were they A-Seers or B-Seers?
I know at least one or two of them were B-Seers because I've known them for
the
many
most part,
years.
Were they AC?
No, I mean, the ones that were down were just a mix of both A-Seers and B-Seers. And if this is your first episode, we're talking about after COVID vendors and before COVID vendors.
Correct.
I would say I heard from more people that it was down than I heard from people that it was up. So I'm willing to admit those are always people outside of the norm that are going to have a good show, even when everybody's bombing. That just happens.
I think at a show like that, I think there's so many variables for those people that were up more so than down. I think a lot of people moved to a better spot, and all of a sudden they're on a wall with no traffic. Last year,
one of them
this
was
year,
this was their first year doing it, so they wouldn't have had a point of reference.
So it was a lot better than last year. Then,
but they were just really thrilled with how it had gone. So I will say that's one of them. So I agree. I think it was probably overall down for a few people, or for most people, for most vendors.
Majority. Everybody I talked to, except for I talked to probably 20, and I think maybe 3 or 4 were like, I was up about 10%, but it wasn't like I was up 50 at an epic show. They were just happy with. I think a lot of them were having such down years. Like I talked to one vendor who was like, he like bombed at New York like I did, and then he's like, I did better at Rhode Island than I did in New York. And he's like, I did by like $1,000 more. And then I did at New York. So that's phenomenal for him. I mean, I'm very happy for him.
That's true. It felt to me, and it felt, and I don't know if you agree, that it really was directly tied to the tentativeness of, I guess, the election. That was probably the first show, I would say, for me all year that I felt like, okay, this feels weird. Crowd's up. I'm in my same spot. this should perform at this level and it's coming in down here. What's the explanation? And it felt like it was an outside the norm explanation. That's the only thing I could come up with, analyzing and obsessing about it all weekend. And it felt like it could have been the election definitely affecting at least my performance there at Rhode Island, or whatever show you were at that weekend, whoever's watching. Excuse me. I don't know, what was your experience if you were at a show the weekend just before the election? Please post below. I'd love to hear if you were up or down. Yeah, so then the election happened. It definitely went the way some people thought and the way a lot of people didn't, which may set up what we just came from, which was Twin Cities Con in Minnesota. That was the next show that we were doing. That set that up for me to be, I was incredibly nervous for Twin Cities. Twin Cities has always been a really solid show.
That was beyond that. You were like depressed. I've never seen you so. You didn't even want to go out to go get good food. You're like, I'm just going back around. I'm not even going to dinner. I'm like, excuse me, Chris Bauer is not going to go get dinner. Are you out of your mind? Especially in Minneapolis, which has a lot of really damn good food.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, okay, I thought we were doing dinner tonight. Nope.
Well, I was expecting Rhode Island to be at least what it was last year, if not better, so that I thought, and this was just me, I thought Twin Cities, it's right after the election, no matter what, you're going to have half the audience is going to be angry or depressed or whatever. And I really thought that show would have been affected more than the weekend before. So I was expecting, and then to come off of Rhode Island being so far down, it was like, oh no, this show's going to bomb too. And I'm going to have a terrible week of two shows that just underperform. That was what I took going into it with my own stuff on it. And then it turned out it was one of my better Twin Cities. Everyone was spending. I was way up. And I was just like, this is so random. I don't know. What was your assessment of Twin Cities? Although you were selling a new product at Twin Cities, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, my whole year sucked. So, like I've talked about on this podcast.
Sure.
And again with Rhode Island, and again with Twin Cities, I did exactly in that weird realm of number that I can't get over, no matter the size of the show.
Sure.
I'm hitting that same number, no matter it's a 2,000 person show or 200,000. It's just like that number I keep hitting.
I got you.
So I'm probably the worst person to ask on that. And I also had a really weird spot at Twin Cities, which we talked about on our review.
Well, I thought I was going to have a bad spot. But I was on the next to last aisle, facing not the entrance, and I was like, "Oh, this spot's going to be really terrible." And we've had Ben on the show, he's a friend of the show, Ben Penrod. I'm in good with Ben. Like usually, he like hooks me up. Well, I didn't know he was hooking me up because that spot turned out to be awesome. So, although I might be giving him too much credit, I don't know if he even considered me. He was just like, stick him anywhere. I know him; he won't complain. Well, I mean, he's probably right. So
I think the question that we really need to ask is, I think obviously it showed that it did take a dip, but is it a weeks, days leading up to the election, or is it the year leading up to election? Because
and it's different.
Everybody keeps saying that the year's down. Now it could be one of two things. It could be it. Overall, though, that's what we have to talk about, because we can't talk about individual people, because also a lot of people bullshit their numbers. A lot of people's egos get involved and they won't admit they had a bad show or whatever. I'm just on, like, you come to me, I'll tell you exactly what I think. There's no hiding it from me.
There's no point.
But at the same time,
you get to doing it long enough, you realize
a lot of people flex, though. Them.
Yeah, I know. Well, especially, and this is a lesson for ACers. Look, you came into a time that was highly heightened. And that's what you got your first couple of years, a taste of the con business right after COVID. And you're already seeing that is not consistent. It just isn't. This business is a roller coaster. It will go up and down depending on the year. And you're already seeing that. Some of you haven't even made it through it. You're already washed out. So if you've made it this long, congrats. You're probably going to be here for a while. But you do always have to be adapting. You always have to be moving. And it's going to have up years and down years. And sometimes there's a direct explanation. A lot of times there's not.
And I actually had that discussion with somebody this weekend, like a casual acquaintance. I see him once a month at shows. And anytime he's that guy's so nice. and he's liked kind of by everyone, but at the same time, he comes up and just drops numbers.
And sure.
Unless you and I are like, if I'm not breaking, I'll put it this way: if I'm not breaking bread with you, don't ever fucking tell me your numbers at all.
Right.
I have no reason to know them. You have no reason to be telling me them.
Also, I'm not going to give them back
it's disrespectful as fuck. No, I'm not going to tell you.
I'm just going to listen
people I can count on.
Good for you.
Literally, these 3 fingers are the people that I tell my numbers that I do. Period. Right. And it's not you. And I said, I looked at him. I said, bro, please don't do that shit with me. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I don't want to hear that you did 6K at this random show. I said, I don't care at all. And I said, I looked at him right in the eye. I said, it's not the flex that you think it is.
No,
it's not.
Because
more people think of it as a negative than they do as you thinking that you're bragging. Also makes you look like a douchebag that you're bragging to somebody who could have had a catastrophically bad show. Like if you came up and bragged to me at New York, I'm going to tell you to fuck off.
Yeah.
Because like I had a bad show, I lost money. I don't want to talk about New York in that way.
Well, that
especially with someone I barely know.
Every show
you were the first
person
to know I lost money.
Yeah. Every show's different
for everyone.
Yeah, for everyone. For every product.
We all don't do well together, unfortunately.
No. There's very few shows where every vendor's like, "Oh my god, I killed it." So,
yeah, I don't think there's any anymore. To be honest,
there will be.
That was a 2021 conversation. I don't think that's a 2025 and 2024 convo. In my opinion,
that could be true.
I just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't talked to any. Like, I'll have a killer show and like come to the show and like, yeah, this show's way down from last year. And I'm
I know.
Oh shit, okay, never mind. I'm like, my advice to these people, ACers, is read the room before you start saying shit to people.
Sure.
Read the room.
Also,
people don't like braggers.
Numbers. Yeah. Trust me, you know how many times I've recommended a show that I killed at, and then that person next year goes and does that show. They sell a totally different product and bomb. And guess what? They're coming up to me next time. They're mad. And it's on my recommendation, which I have nothing to do with that show. I'm just giving my experience. But it does make you have to realize just because you killed it at a show does not mean somebody else is going to. And if they take your advice, you're kind of, it's like the mob. You vouched for this show. They're coming back to you. And depending on their level of anger, you have to deal with it. So I always give lots of asterisks with any show I recommend, or don't recommend for that matter, because I think everybody should try every show with your stuff, because I believe everything's different. Every show is different for everyone.
Yeah, I think it's more of like doing a comparison. Like, oh, well, Chris, tell me, blah 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 show, sales wise, what does it compare to what other show? And then like that's a way for you to gauge how you did at it, and it's at least somewhat of a variable. But yeah, it's just there's too many variables involved in cons these days, and to really like be like that. And
too many.
Let me dip into some stats that I pulled up for this topic that we had. So these are all from e-commerce badassery, which one is a really badass name for a website. It's actually a top economic small business blog. And so they actually did our exact question. If you look up online, it's going to show up. Like if you Google, do sales related jobs decrease in election years and sales and blah, blah. If you look that up, it's going to come up in the top like 3. Any really, really good information here. The only decrease in sales and retail spending, which I think counts with us on a pretty accurate number, was 2020 and 2008, and 2008 was only for 4 months.
Yeah,
where the actually decreased after like the kind of after the election and everything. Like it was a crazy time, obviously, in our lives. If you're around during then as an adult, you realize that it was some of the worst times to be in America, to be honest.
Right before the election, the housing crisis hit.
And then the 2020, just because it was really bad, just everywhere around in November. It was, we had had that second boom of COVID, and we weren't out spending.
Were still canceling.
We were. So those are the and that was only one there's 2 quarters where things were down in 2008 and only 1 quarter in 2020 that was down. Every year it has increased. Even after election, it's either stalemate or like just completely flat or went up.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of have to use that for us, since we are kind of a retail base, even though we, pop up from city to city and do these shows. It is arguably, statistics wise, you have to kind of pull from that, just because there's not really another variable type of statistics that would ever really pull up for us. So you can't control the housing market. It has nothing to do with us.
Right.
Corporate, the S&P 500 really has nothing to do with us. So I think that retail sales is probably the closest thing.
Yeah, it is.
And so you kind of,
it is.
And in their study, they showed basically only weeks leading up to the election did sales dip, and then depending on who they won, it was how fastly they went up. They all went up, but it was a matter of who won and who thought that the economy was. And you could almost even go with that with the combination of, in a smaller scale, of Rhode Island before being the weeks before, and maybe even New York. As being down, and then suddenly Twin Cities was up for almost everybody I know that was there, and that was the week after the election. In a very liberal city, and it still went up. Which I would have been very curious to have done a more conservative based con the week after and seen if it had been different.
I had my girls at Detroit at Motor City over the weekend while we were at Twin Cities. And that state went red for this election, and I would say that's a conservative state, and they were down from last year. So I talked to a couple people that were up. Yeah, so I don't know. So I mean, it seems like it is odd. But again, that's not accounting for all the normal factors of any show, where booth position, which way was the crowd flowing, what were they in the mood to buy that weekend, that's stuff we deal with every week, no matter what year it is. So it's interesting. I think
let me plug you into a little bit more stats on that like the site was actually very informative. I really liked the site. Anybody here, I'd recommend checking it out. E-commerce badassery.com. Like I said, it'll pop up very quickly in the top 5 for sure of any of your searches related to do with that. 45% of Americans read some type of news every day based on the economy.
Sure. That's a lot.
Which I found very interesting. Half of the country. I'm assuming 30%. I'm assuming 75% of those 45% are old white people, but that don't really affect us. But 70% of Americans think that a recession is coming in within 2 years, regardless of whoever wins the election.
Really?
And
that's
then
surprising.
The really one that I found out, that any entrepreneur who owns their own business, which I think is majority of us in this industry, that they lose on average of 6 to 7 hours a week of sleep worrying about the future of their business.
That seems low, but I get the average. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that tracks.
We've all lost sleep. I lost sleep over New York for, oh my God, like a week before I couldn't sleep. I felt sick to my stomach knowing what potentially could happen. And I was right in my pit of my stomach. But yeah,
it's interesting.
Let me ask you can I ask you a question? Then I want you to respond to this.
Yeah.
And this is what it said on the website. It said, is the issue of sales decreasing for people like us in your post-COVID world, and the crease going down in 2024 for a lot of people has gone down? Right. At what point is it just an excuse?
I know. That's a good question.
How often is it a crutch for people having shitty businesses?
I know.
Like, I know I'm growing because I have entirely a new business. I knew that going in, but there's people that have had businesses for 3-4 years and it's starting to suck for them. And they're blaming every other outside thing and never once talk about themselves at all. We all know those people. Everybody has those.
I know. I talk to them every weekend.
What's your thoughts?
My thoughts, and honestly, I can say this about every single time. I've never I've never blamed something and not at least done something about it. If anyone knows me, I'm constantly changing my booth setup, what I have on the backdrop, what lights I use, which looks weird. I took last 2 shows, I've taken a table out of my setup, a whole table, and I feel like it's helping because it was almost getting to be too much product. I think if anyone, and I can speak for myself, I don't let things like is it an election year that's bad or whatever keep me from still evolving the business. I think you have to, if you want to stay current in this business, every single week, every single show we go to, there are new vendors there. Vendors that could take off or wash out in the first year. We don't know, but they're going to take money out of our pockets because they're going to take money from a customer. And that's how our business, while we're all friendly, we're all very cutthroat. And you have to be in a business that's literally, you're vying for every dollar in the room, the same as every other vendor there. So you have to evolve your business. You can't just hide behind an excuse. It's an election year, all the shows are going to be down. Well, you're definitely going to be down, but you could have been up on some of those.
That attitude.
Yeah, because that attitude is what's going to sink your business. And I think that's just, outside of an election year at all, I think that's just good, sound thought process of how you look at your business. If you're doing the exact same setup every weekend that you always have, the exact same product that you always have, stagnant is right around the corner. It just is. You're going to plateau on sales and then you're going to start going down. That's just how I look at it.
And I think you're absolutely correct in that way, because if you flip flop it, everything was exactly the same during COVID. So 2021 and 2022, the crazy boom, it was the exact same thing, because your headspace was like, oh my God, I can't wait for the next show. Like in 2021, I was like, I'm going to do a show every weekend, because at a show I was making $3,000 in sales at in 2018. I'm now making $6,800. The next weekend, I'm like, oh, can I beat that? Can I do 10K at the show? I did 5K
and
in
it felt
2019.
like you could. And a lot of times you did during those 2 years. And there was
we
no
were all
explanation
fucking
for it.
cocky and arrogant as fuck, and we were getting into it, and like that also helped in sales. Like it did.
Yeah, it did.
Like,
we were cocky. Yeah,
the
we
stress
thought,
level was way lower. Oh man, I take half of the new norm, to be honest.
Oh, with you. Dude, especially the consistency of it. I'd take half of the consistency of 21 and 22.
Yeah,
God, those were good years. But yeah, they aren't the norm. They were a fluke, and we're going to have more flukes like that in the future. And we're going to have worse years in the future. It's a roller coaster, this business is. And whether or not you think the election affected it or didn't affect it, honestly, we don't know. I think those statistics kind of are a little telling. That was what it felt like to me. The weeks leading up to were down. And then there was almost like a relief for Twin Cities this last weekend that made it go up for me. So maybe that's tracking exactly what it's saying. It's people are at least relieved the election's over. I think that can free up capital right there. But I don't know.
I think we'll
see how it goes.
I'm gonna play Notre Dame for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay? I think that we're gonna see a little boost in holiday spending, because I think people are going to be a little less nervous about the economy going bad, for at least temporarily, because the new administration is all about money, 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 money. And I think people are going to feel a little less stressed about that.
Yeah.
But then when January comes around and everything comes in and they start releasing all the people that are going to be doing this job and that job, I think you're going to have a little backlash and nervousness from one side in particular.
Sure.
Which they always do. And then I think you're going to have like that first quarter, I think is going to be really mediocre. And I think that springtime, early summer, I'm going to call it right now, I think your Planet Comic-Con in Huntsville are going to be off the fucking chains. And I think that they're going to kick off the year and everything's going to go up from last year.
I hope so.
Now, I'm not saying this is not going to be AC number 2021 stuff, but I think if you did, I think you're in for a 10 to 20% increase next year. Calling it right now. Start slow. Second, third, and fourth quarter, I think, are going to be very good.
My prediction
There's my predictions.
Mine is it's all going to burn down. Get out. No, I'm just kidding. No, I would say that's probably a good assessment. I hope that you're right. I would love to see a 10 to 20% increase across the board. at shows from summer on. We'll see. Again, I've been doing this long enough. So have you. We've been up and down constantly. It doesn't. It's disappointing when it's happening. But it's not going to affect what I do. I'm still going to be at a show every weekend. I'm still going to be putting in 100%, if not more. I'm still going to be changing up my setup and just keep evolving. And I feel like that in itself makes election years or other things like COVID or whatever, they take a back seat to your own ambition. You can make this business anything you want it to be, no matter what year you're in, as long as you don't accept what's happening to you. Just keep pushing. Correct. And you'll get there. Election year be damned. So that's my 2 cents on it. But anyway, closing thoughts.
I'm going to close with this. All bad times are an opportunity to be better and to have a situation where like all bad can turn into really great.
It sure
and
can.
that means you need to step up your game, look within, stop looking at outside resources, stop out what everyone else is doing, step up your game. That's what I'm doing right now. I realize I'm not doing shit, so I'm stepping up my stuff. I'm changing up my setup. I'm changing up what I'm selling a little bit and how I'm selling it. And, I think you just have to look within.
That's what's going
You'll get stagnant results.
Yeah. You're going to get increasingly worse results because if something's not working, whether it's an election year or not, that means it's not working. So you can either sit there and accept the not working, that's going to get worse and worse and worse, or you can change it.
Or do something about it. Do something about it. I'm going to quote a great philosopher. No, I'm going to create a fantastic philosopher. If you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. So
that's true. Is that Michael Scott? Is that the philosopher?
Yes, correct. That's my girl T Swizzle. So on that note, I'm going to end it on T Swift because that's how I do. But thank you guys all for joining us. Please, in the comments, tell us what you guys are thinking. Was your year down? And how are you looking into 2025? Because I think you and I have a lot of positive outlook, but I'm curious to see what everyone else thinks. So
what are you changing?
There we are.
Change something.
Ooh, good idea.
And thanks to the 500 subscribers that took a chance on us. And let's go another 500 more. See you guys next time.
Join the convo.